Welcome back. It's the Flow Sports Hour on Flow FM. The Aish Football Academy is heading to the Clare Valley with South Australian football royalty Michael Aish running under 12, under 13 and under 14 footy clinics at Clare Oval for one day only on Friday the 19th of April. And Michael joins me on the line to tell us more. Michael, hi, thanks for joining me. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Dan. It's footy season, so looking forward to it's obviously started. We've just got through Gather Round, which was another huge success, so it's been great.
Yes, we're well and truly into footy season in the AFL and the SANFL's underway, and a lot of the state leagues and the country seasons are sort of just getting underway as well. So it's certainly a great time of year. And I'll talk to you in just a moment about the clinics that are happening in the Clare Valley that you're running. But before we do that, can you just give our listeners a little bit of background about the Aish Football Academy?
Sure, Dan. Probably about 3 years ago, I just, with my son, Jesse, who's been living in Sydney, was working with the Sydney Academy Junior group for a little while, and then went out on his own and started doing some, groups and club coaching. And I looked at it here, and what I actually saw was a bit of a gap that I thought was there with kids coming through the system, that there was a significant, I suppose, gap in their skill compared to, I think, many years ago. Now, I know times change and the like, and they've got so many more things that, they might get into. But I thought, well, if I can make a difference and try to fast-track a group of kids, both boys and girls that want to improve their football, then let's have a look at that. So I partnered with a great company in here in Adelaide called Cavio Partners, and the CEO of that was certainly strategic in helping me get the academy underway. And we started 2 or 3 years ago with about 72 kids, more so in the 13 to 15 age bracket, and had a look at those. And we've been going 3 years now, and we've certainly now dropped that down to an under 11 squad as well, and in both boys and girls. And it's a real enjoyment, I think, more than anything, and a passion to see young kids improve, and those will get to a level that they want to get to, and others will get to another level. But as long as they enjoy it and are dedicated, it's certainly fulfilling.
It's interesting you've got the emphasis on improving skills, because from when you were a star redleg in the SANFL back in the 80s, the game was vastly different to how it's played now in the National League. And of course, today the emphasis is highly on maybe more of the athlete than the player and the skills at times. Do you think that's part of the assessment that you see compared to when you were playing, and there probably was more of an emphasis on skill-based stuff such as, the basics like straight kicking? Yeah,
Dan, I think you're pretty spot on there. Look, they're certainly athletes now. Now, obviously being full-time, for the professional side of things, but the opportunity that young boys and young girls have now is that if they can actually knuckle down and get their skill right at an early age, it will certainly set them up, to get as far as they can. And of course, it boils down to, what they want to get out of it. And I think in today's footy, when I watch it, the athlete side of things, it is fantastic to see. The game's so quick, but not only being so quick, they do have to be so fit. So there's a lot of interchanges and the like. So it's on for 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever it is, and you're back and forward. But in essence, I think the skills got even better now because of the way the game's played, and I think it's even more imperative now from a skill point of view, because the way the game's structured and the way the coaches have brought in more of a defensive side of things, where there's, they all move up the ground, they all move back, forward, and there's 30 players or whatever in such a small area. So your awareness and your skill level to be able to execute under so much pressure, and I think there's even more pressure now because there's so much more people around the ball, that's actually gone up to another level again, and it's fantastic to see.
I haven't heard that analysis before of the skill of making quick decisions under more pressure. So it's interesting to hear that. I think a lot of people who played in the 80s are pretty adamant that the skills back then were a lot better. But you're right, there's certainly more pressure on the decision makers in today's game. Let's talk about these clinics that you're running in the Clare Valley. They're kicking off 11 a.m. at Clare Oval on Friday the 19th of April. 1 hour sessions, groups of 8, $30 per person. So groups of 8, they're smaller groups than what you might see at other footy clinics.
Yes, Dan. When we started the academy, it was all about, I just don't think that you can actually give the participants, when there is maybe one coach to 15 or 20 players, or even 12 players. I think that to personalise things, one coach to every 6 or 8 players, I think you can really hone in on each player as we do the drills. And to have even numbers is also pretty important because, you can pair up. So it's a lot easier when you're pairing up than even you had maybe a group of 3 and some pairs. So that is another, not a criteria, but it's certainly helpful that you have even numbers. And then that you can actually then spend some time with individuals, and then you not isolate, but you would say, right, okay, that group doesn't look too bad. These guys, okay, I'll spend a little bit more time over here with those guys. And it's more of a one-on-one, and then you can actually really delve into maybe their strengths and their weaknesses and show them and spend some more time on them rather than having one coach to 12 or 15 or 20, because it's just one big group session and you can't really do the one-on-one and really focus on the individual and what they might need to improve on.
Have you done many clinics out in regional SA before?
No, this is the first. We were contacted by Alice Duncan, who is obviously lives up there, and she just threw that out with her kids to maybe do a bit of training, and then mentioned, hey, look, why don't we, see if we can put it out to the clubs and see if they might be interested in that. And so this is the first, and hopefully there'll be a few more to come, because it is always great to get out to the country. I've actually been getting out to the country for many years in my, day-to-day work, which is taken me to, all over Adelaide and into Victoria and down to Mildura and those sort of things. And even past supporters who have been coaching local footy clubs in the Renmark area and those sort of things, when I've been up there and they'd say, hey, look, I'm coaching so-and-so, would you come out? And I'm normally overnight. So I'm more than happy to get out there. And, if I can help, one child or 10 or 20, I'm more than happy to do that.
Well, I've got no doubt you'll come across some stars of the future out in the Clare Valley. There's so much talent playing footy out in the country, that's for sure. And on your website, it says you started this business after noticing a gap in the market to help South Australia's youth reach their highest football potential. Do you feel the pathways in place currently for young players are adequate for helping them reach their full potential, or are there some bits missing? No,
look, I think, Dan, it's certainly got considerably better, because when you're looking at the SNL in particular, when they had the under-16s, and going back probably only a year or so ago, they would only play maybe 6 to 8 games a year. Now that's gone to a full season. And then the SNL clubs will start having more development squads, so they'll start targeting more of the younger kids. And I'm very proud to say one of our girls who started in the academy 2 years ago, Emily Mabelson, has, as a 15-year-old now, she started with the West Adelaide women's team. This year went straight into senior footy this year, and then has got into the state under-16s team and played just recently and got best on ground against Victoria. And she's one of our very first that have been, fast-tracked, so to speak, straight into that. And I can see certainly a bright future for her and many of the others that are still coming through.
Fantastic. It is great to see the way the women's game has grown over the years. So it's even better to see the work that's being done at grassroots level to ensure that growth continues. And does helping players reach their highest football potential, does that extend with you to their off-field potential as well? Is there work going on behind the scenes to make sure these players, if they don't make it to an AFL or a SANFL career, will be able to reach heights in their sporting and other ventures as well?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think that I certainly stress, to pretty well every young man or young woman that we've got to certainly keep an understanding of while we love playing football, Australian rules football or any sport, there's so much more, to life than what goes on in just footy. And the amount of work, obviously, mums and dads and grandfathers and grandmothers do for their young children, I always stress that it is such a thing to be very mindful of what your parents, what your grandparents do for you, and to always be grateful and thankful for what they do for you, because they only want the best for their children. And, like I've always confessed that, you can't have a standard on the field and then abuse it off the field. And I think that you've hopefully grow up and teach these kids that while your sport is fantastic and it's very important, and I always stress Ash Barty, okay, great Australian tennis player, and I read a quote from her that she said about probably 6 or 12 months ago. So everyone knows Ash Barty, but this really resonated with me, and there was a quote in the paper and said, "I'd rather be known as a great person than a great tennis player." And I thought, what a wonderful outlook, because we are all role models to a certain extent. And I think as we grow and mature, to be a great sports person, fantastic, but just in general to be a great person and be grateful for what we've got and then hopefully give back is what we should be doing.
Some really good philosophies there. Interesting to hear those. Thank you for sharing them. And Michael, I do need to ask you, there's been a lot of buzz about the Norwood Redlegs, and there's been a lot happening at Norwood Oval with a few games hosted there, AFL games for Gather Round over the past 2 years. How have you felt seeing AFL games played at Norwood Oval?
Oh, well, it's certainly, the last couple of years have certainly been there. Was lucky enough to head out there last year when Fremantle came, and my brother's son James, obviously a part of Fremantle and a part of Norwood, to play there, which was fantastic. And then I was there on Sunday to watch the Richmond and St Kilda game. And look, just to be out there and the buzz, the atmosphere, everything, even before the game, it does certainly take me back, to the 70s and 80s when, SNFL football was up and about. I'm not saying it's not up and about now. Certainly, I think the SNFL deserves, many more people going to the games, but obviously there's so much on and the like. But the quality of SNFL football today is absolutely amazing, and I think that just the gather round concept that the government have got organised is absolutely sensational for South Australia and for Australian rules football, and hopefully that'll keep going, and then that'll entice, I think, even more kids to want to get involved, and maybe who knows where they'll end up.
Michael, I'm interested to get your thoughts as one of the all-time great Norwood Redlegs players, and it's great to hear that you're still a fan of the SANFL and speak so highly of it. But what would be your thoughts on a national reserves comp? There's been a bit of momentum for that idea over the last few years, and we've seen the NEFL sort of joining with the VFL and pretty much the entire east side of Australia playing in one reserves comp now, and Port Adelaide, the Magpies, talking about joining that comp as well. Do you think it's something that should happen, or is it something that you want to happen?
Look, I think, not really understanding the whole, how the structures with the AFL teams and what they're doing. But look, I think it's certainly inevitable that Port and Crows would probably be best suited for their development to be in a national competition. That's the only thing that's going to help them. There are probably a few drawbacks to being the SNFL and how that's structured for them. And they want to be, they're in the AFL elite competition. So they want to be actually the same rules apply to their second side, so to speak, that it would to the Essendons and the Collingwoods and whatever second side or reserve side or whatever you like to call it. I don't know if that happens now, but I think that will happen. Then they can keep it all together. I don't think that'd be great for the SNFL, but the AFL competition is the national competition, so to speak, and you know they are the top tier, so they will obviously want to do the best for their clubs and for the best for their players to succeed. So yes, I think it will happen, and we just have to wait and see.
And we'll just have to hope they don't call it the VFL when it does become a national competition as well, because it's nonsense enough that they've got New South Wales and Queensland teams in there and they're calling it the VFL. And there'll be a Tassie team in there soon enough as well, and they'll still be calling it that, even though it's 4 states being represented. And speaking of Tassie, obviously they're coming in as the 19th team, and where there's smoke, sometimes there's fire. Not always, but sometimes. And there's been a bit of smoke about the Redlegs coming in as the 20th AFL team. Is that something you'd like to see as a heart and soul Redleg?
I would love that to be the next step for the Norwood Football Club. There is no question I'd love to see that. When we look at the Crows and the Port going in, I think that if there was to be a 20th licence, the Norwood Football Club would be silly not to be engaging in that right now and trying to set themselves to be that club to go in, as would many other clubs that want to do that. I know that, I'm being obviously pretty biased here, but I think Norwood Footy Club, as what they've got there, the way their redevelopment has happened, I think it's the best suburban ground in Adelaide by a mile. You get 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people there. The atmosphere is sensational. The location is great. Now every club's SNFL club is going to say the same as I'm saying. But look, the SNFL, great competition. Who knows what's going to happen if there is ever going to be a 20th licence, whether it goes to the Northern Territory or what that might look like. That probably would be years away, but why not get to work now? Show your interest, and who knows what may happen.
Well, if there is a 20th licence coming in, I think Norwood, the Redlegs, would put up as good of a case as anyone. So it will be interesting to see if anything materialises there. Michael, we'll leave things there. Just before we go, I'll just repeat that the footy clinics you're running at the Clare Oval are one day only, the 19th of April, $30 per person for under 12s, under 13s and under 14s. Is there anywhere you'd direct people to go to learn more about those clinics if they do want to get involved?
Well, they're probably best to get in touch with the Academy online, which will come through to my wife who does the back end. Not too sure if Friday is completely full. It'd be best to go through your local clubs up there because they would have been contacted. So I think the local clubs up there to be contacted, they can get in touch with us at the Academy, and then we can have a look or get them on to Alice Duncan up there, who is coordinating things up there, and just see what that might eventuate.
All right, Michael, thank you very much for your time today. Great chatting with you. Go the Redlegs, and hopefully the clinics up in the Clare Valley go well. Enjoy your time out in the country.
Appreciate your time, Dan. Thanks for that.